I've been banging my head against a brick wall for several years now, and I asked the question, what has happened to Sonos? What has happened to the music technology Sonos? Basically, Nathan, can you just give us a potboiler of what Sonos is?
Yeah, Sonos are a commercial provider of home speaker systems. You know, they range from, as you can see maybe behind us, a very small Sonos One, that's quite an old one now, where you could effectively have, I mean, that is effectively a smart speaker. You can, you know, some of them have got Alexa built in, you can talk to them, ask them questions. But it's really about having wireless music throughout your home. You know, you connect a speaker to the internet, you have a Sonos controller somewhere that can talk to all of them. That's usually on an app. And then you can play music, and you can tell it to play in certain rooms, you can tell it to play, you know, wherever you want to. And I think for the longest time, Sonos have probably been the only ones in the consumer space. They've pretty much dominated it.
So, and it was a game changer, wasn't it? Back in the day.
Absolutely.
I'm going to come back to you about, you know, what we call closed systems versus open systems. But Nathan, did you ever invest in Sonos yourself?
I'm heavily invested in Sonos.
You still are?
I still am.
And you're using it every day?
Every single day, without fail. Now,
how's it going?
Very good. I have no problems with Sonos at all. And I may be one of the few that have zero problems. I also have only got Sonos in one room of the house. So I'm not doing multi-room broadcasting of music. We have... we basically use Sonos for our home theatre setup. So we have the big Sonos Arc underneath the TV. We have two Sonos Ones behind for the surround sound and a big subwoofer behind the TV to deliver the bass.
Thank you. So one room, surround sound.
Yep.
Not you know, all quite close to each other.
The sound bar's connected to the TV via a wired HDMI interface, so there's no wireless thing going on there. The satellite speakers are wireless, they do connect via Wi-Fi. There is the occasional, you know, moment where I have to reset them because they've lost their connection, whatever, but they are really old speakers.
So what do you think everyone's talking about then when we talk about the what is referred to as the Great Sonos Meltdown, the Sonos disaster? And I'll come back to my personal opinion about that.
I mean, I feel like this all kind of kicked off, and this is my own opinion, it all kind of kicked off when they introduced the Sonos S2 app, where the app kind of changed. The interface was new for people, and this could almost be, you know, one of my Tech Room 101s, where you have this system that's working flawlessly, and then the product owner decides to update a piece of software or an app to a new version where they think it's all shiny and great, and it just completely breaks and everyone hates it. So they can't find where things are.
You're talking about what they call the airlock of software, the May 2024 disaster, where Sonos launched a complete redesign of their app and a fundamental shift to cloud-based architecture. And what people are talking about was suddenly missing features like alarms, sleeper timers, the ability to edit play cues simply vanished.
Yeah.
Latency and lag, because it relied upon the cloud. Turning up the volume, it added an average of 3 seconds.
Sure.
To the incompatibility, users couldn't roll back to the old version because the speaker's firmware was updated.
It made a whole bunch of hardware completely redundant.
Bricked.
Yeah.
And it was so many complaints that the leadership were fired, and they'd had a complete new leadership and fix it first pledge, where they pledged to fix all the problems with Sonos. Emily, Sonos is a closed system. It's really hard to be interoperable with other systems. You had some interesting comments about closed systems in this sort of technology.
Yeah, I remember policy discussions about the Internet of Things, because I'm that old, and you know, what we now call smart devices that are connected. And I remember this professor from LSE saying, this was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, what we are going to start with is an internet of private things, and what we're going to end up with is an internet of broken things. And I think the Sonos example really illustrates it. you've got this combination of hardware, so a company has to be good at hardware and software. They're not normally great at both. They make a change, and that affects, the functioning of the hardware. I must say, as a user of Sonos, I've gone from just being able to do it without thinking to now no longer attempting it because it always goes wrong. And I wonder whether the difference, Nathan, between our setup and yours is we have multiple rooms and also multiple people wanting to play stuff.
Thick walls, poor Wi-Fi connectivity.
And that will all have an impact unless you've got your house, wired with Ethernet and in every plug socket.
And it's just
you're going
to constantly a nasty surprise.
It's not true of all protocols, is it? Because our Philips Hue system, which is throughout the house, works flawlessly with those protocols. But this one's going through the internet all the time.
And the Philips Hue one has a physical box that it connects to, whereas the Sonos ones, there is no physical box.
Well, that's
other than there'll be some controllers within the speakers that enable you to access things wirelessly over Wi-Fi. But as we were saying earlier, we both have Philips Hue, and that both works flawlessly. It works flawlessly for you, and it works flawlessly for me.
So the current status is the app is functional again, but a deep rift remains between Sonos and its power users, and there's a trust gap. And many owners have begun selling their gear and moving on to competitors like Blue Sound. I actually was searching for this and found on the Sonos support forum itself, people are discussing on the forum good, reliable alternatives to Sonos. So Sonos itself is facilitating conversations with people about how to get
off,
how to get
I
away
feel
from
for them.
Sonos.
They must be.
Well, the Wall Street is very lukewarm about the company because there are remaining bugs, ghost speakers. People feel that they bought forever hardware but were bought into temporary software. So
I think that is the policy issue that comes back from lots of journal papers is you're moving from something that you thought you owned into something that can then become a brick overnight because of software change.
And the Sonos speakers is a good example of that, where you rely on their software to make them work, because none of them, I say none of them, very few of them have a physical connection where you can input or connect via Bluetooth. There's only a few of them that you can connect via Bluetooth. Most of them rely on you going through their app to connect to them.
And this is a big problem for me, that we have Apple Music, and with Apple Music I can search for things, and I can search for a rich library of all sorts of things that are of interest to me. Going through the Sonos experience into Apple Music, I get a really truncated,
it's terrible,
and a poor reduction of the Apple library.
I never do that. I will never listen to music on my Sonos via the app. I will always use the native Apple Music app on my iPhone and AirPlay it to the speakers.
Now, you said you use Sonos flawlessly as long as you bypass Sonos app and go through the Apple app, which is good. But if you're on my system, these speakers don't appear in the Apple app as offered speakers. You get a huge catalogue of absolute nonsense. So